Well, hello again, everybody. Lovely to touch base with you again this week as we're now into December and on the rush down to Christmas. I really don't know where the year's gone. For me, it's just gone so quickly in spite of all the hassles and the issues that we faced this year. It just seems to have got away from me. But anyway, here we are. I've just snuck out of the office after having been there all week working on a whole bunch of things at my desk, and I'm here in the ADRA shed with the ADRA truck just trying to get an hour or two to stick this bull bar on the front of it, because I recognise that we're coming into a season where there's a high possibility of disasters, and this truck could end up going to a whole bunch of those day and night. And given that there's only a piece of sheet metal and a plastic dash between any kangaroo or a cow and the driver, a little more safety and security is a good thing. So hope in the next hour or two to get this bar fitted to the truck so that it's ready to go if it's needed over the year end. But folks, there's just so much good stuff that God's doing at the moment, and so this is a little bit of a praise report, and in fact I've got more that I could share with you this week, so I'll put it off to next week as well. But let me start by saying I had a wonderful time at the Cairns Investiture on Sabbath. Two beautiful clubs, they're adventurers and they're pathfinders. They gave us a demonstration in marching, and they sang some beautiful items. Really just was a wonderful afternoon there as we congratulated them on making it through the year and giving them their investiture pins and awards and so forth. So it's been a real highlight for me, and thank you, Pastor Travis, for sending me around to participate in some of these investitures. It's lovely to see the incredible work done for our kids, and again I want to thank the leaders there in Cairns Church and Edmonton who are running these clubs for these kids, because you're investing in some of the most important people in our church congregations. Last week also we were blessed to have a dozen Carlisle Year 12 students up here on our campground, and the reason they came to us was because they decided that instead of going to schoolies week, where you see in the news kids get into trouble and there's all sorts of bad influences there, that instead they would come and do a service project and bless others. And so they came up here to our campground and they did a heap of jobs. They painted the old furniture shed there to match in with the new address shed. They cut out a heap of Christmas decorations and they installed them with lighting on the front fence, and it looks absolutely magic. The other night I drove down there, it was all illuminated, and it just says something wonderful to our neighbours about how we believe as Seventh-day Adventist Christians in the true meaning of Christmas. And so I really love what those students were able to do and the general clean-up around the site and everything. And I want to thank those dedicated Year 12 students for giving up sort of the party life which many kids head off to after they do their exams, and come up here and work so hard on the campground to just make this place look more beautiful and representative to our neighbours. So thank you, Carlisle Year 12s and the teachers and chaplains that brought you up here. I wanted to give you an update too with staffing, because up till now everything's been reasonably settled apart from replacing Natalie Scott in the office, and Monday night is the final meeting on that and we should have an answer. But just in the last week or two we've had two of our pastors called out of the conference, and I think I told you that last week with Pastor Siggy out of Darwin and Pastor James London out of the Cairns area. Well, the committee has done some really good work in this, and I'm pleased to be able to report that their replacements have been found. And so what we're doing is we're moving Pastor Asava from Ayr to go up to Darwin, and then we're calling in Pastor Ray Hobbs, who is just a little over the border down south in Rockhampton. We're calling him up to step into Ayr and Home Hill and Bowen. And so we're really pleased to have someone of Ray's calibre and know that he'll be an absolute blessing. And then in Cairns, to replace James, we're calling up a fellow who's a real whiz both in ministry and evangelism, but is a pastry chef by trade, and his name is Lofili Ayu. And as you get to know Lofili, I know that you'll fall in love with the guy, and you'll appreciate the ministry strengths and skills that he brings up there as he pastors Cairns, Samoan, Edmonton, and does chaplaincy work at the school. And so we're really pleased to welcome these two high caliber gentlemen into our team and know that they'll be a really good fit here in the Northern Australian Conference. The other thing I wanted to mention is that this Sabbath is Pastor Sean Tavai's ordination service. We had Pastor David Gilmore's a few weeks ago, and Pastor Sean's is this weekend, December 5. And not to allow Pastor David to outdo him, up there in Mareeba Church where this ordination service is going to be held, that will also be followed by a Pathfinder investiture and a baptism. So it's going to truly be another one of those high days in our conference, and we congratulate Pastor Sean on God's calling on his life to this full-time ministry role. So I'll give you a picture or two next week when I share with you an update on that. But two more items before I wrap up, and one is that when the Board of Directors met this Tuesday evening of this week, they were looking at our financial position, and this year it's incredibly healthy, not just due to the faithful return of tithe that I shared with you last week or the week before, and we're grateful for that. We're nearly $250,000 up on budget. But what's been an absolute blessing to our bottom line this year is all of the money that the government has given us. And so with JobKeeper funding and some payroll tax relief, our bottom line's looking really healthy. And as we sat there and recognised that some of our churches have been struggling because in not being able to meet together, the offerings have severely reduced, and they're finding it hard to meet their bills and the things that they need to make payment for, the board voted on Tuesday night to set aside $100,000 of that funding that the government has given us and to proportion it back to the churches for them to use on whatever they want to use. No strings attached, but just to give back to the churches because we've been so generously provided for this year, especially with government funding. And so in the first few months of next year that'll happen. We've got to work out a formula and make it all fair and equitable for everybody, and the board has to sign off on it. But your church can expect some funds coming your way just to help offset the expenses you've incurred and the lack of income that you've had this year. It's a one-off, but we've been blessed, and we in turn want to bless you who have been so faithful during this pandemic year. So thank you for your faithfulness, and I trust that as those funds come back, they'll be appreciated and put to really good use. The last thing that I want to share with you today is just another random blessing that came out of the blue, and that is that there's a very generous fellow in Greater Sydney Conference who was wanting to provide keyboards or pianos, I should say, for churches and schools down there. And in his generosity, he's included the Northern Australian Conference in that offer, and so at the moment it's something that we're rushing because there's a deadline on it, but at the moment I've put it out to all our pastors and our principals that a brand new piano, electric piano, can be provided to our churches or our schools thanks to the generosity of this donor down in Sydney. And so I want to thank that donor very, very much, but also praise God, because with government funding and with staffing and with things like the piano, and I'll share with you some more sponsorship stuff next week as well, God is just pouring out his blessings on us, and I am so grateful. In spite of the hassles and the challenges of this year, so many good things have happened. And as we wind up the year, I can look back and I can just see God's leading. And so in sharing a verse with you today, Isaiah 65 and verse 24 comes to mind, where God says, "Before they call, I will answer. And while they are still speaking, I will hear." I truly believe that's what God has done this year. I just see him having done it and continuing to do it in amazing ways. God is so good, my friends. Let's not forget to thank him for the blessings amidst the circumstances that surround us and that challenge us. Let's thank him for all the good things that he has done. And whatever's on your heart, whatever you're going through, that promises for you too. Before we call, he'll answer. And while we're speaking, he will hear. Be encouraged and be blessed.